Welcome to Caregiver Chats. Today I'm talking about caregiver guilt and shame. So stay tuned and we'll get into it. Hi, Dr. Lakelyn here. I'm a gerontologist and caregiving advocate for Home Instead, an honor company. I'm so glad you're taking the time to listen. Be sure to subscribe to Caregiver Chats on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting app. I also love your questions. You can email me at caregiverchats@homeinsteadinc.com. That's caregiverchats@homeinsteadinc.com. Today, we're going to focus on some of the emotions often associated with caregiving. That is guilt and shame. Guilt is an all too common experience for caregivers. I hear many family caregivers share how they feel guilty that they're not doing enough, guilty when they get frustrated in their role, guilty when they take time for themselves, and even guilty when they have to ask for help. And I could go on and on. One thing I don't think we talk enough about in the caregiving space is the shame that can come along with the guilt. Shame can stem from feelings of inadequacy or perceived failure. It can lead to feelings of isolation, unworthiness, and self-blame. If you're listening and struggling with this, know you're in the right place. I'm really looking forward to unpacking this topic with Susanne White. Susanne is a seasoned family caregiver, author, and speaker who has spent over a decade caring for her own loved ones. Susanne's caregiving journey began unexpectedly one Christmas when her father, a strong World War II veteran, fell ill while caring for her mother, who was starting to show signs of dementia. This sudden shift changed Susanne's life as she stepped in to support her parents, and she learned firsthand the challenges and rewards of caregiving. Well, I am so excited for Susanne to join me today. Hi, Susanne. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. How about yourself?
I'm wonderful. Thanks so much for having me. I just love your chats.
Oh, well, thank you so much. The pleasure is truly mine. So excited to dive in on this topic. And I was just sharing a little bit about your caregiving journey and was hoping you could expand upon that. I know you've juggled caring for multiple loved ones at the same time as part of your caregiving story. So can you just tell us more about that, what that was like, and just share a little bit more?
Sure, I'd be very happy to. Well, I took care of both my mom and dad simultaneously. We have a joke, actually. At one point, I had dueling wheelchairs when I would have to have one in rehab and one visiting the other one in rehab, and they were both in wheelchairs. So that was kind of fun to manage that. My mom and dad were a really good team, and they were very devoted to each other, and they hid from us for quite some time that my mom was probably in the early stages of dementia. My dad's heart issues were getting worse.
Oh, wow.
They worked together as a team to hide it. And I know a lot of caregivers go through this, and those of us who don't have that, how can they possibly do that? They work really hard at it, and if you're not with them every single day, they have to make this little commitment. So we knew that something was kind of going on, but not really sure. And they most certainly weren't telling us. And we would all go meet together in Florida for the holidays at my sister's when she was living there. And my mom and dad flew down, and they had to take my dad off the airplane. He was so sick and so exhausted, he couldn't get off the plane himself. So my sister called me. I was in New York at the time and said, you should get down here right away. They just took daddy off the plane. And I was like, what? Because he was, very stoic, tall, never sick a day in his life, never complained, glass half full. He was just, for him to be that sick was a real red flag for us. And sure enough, he had caregiver burnout and his heart issues. He had some heart issues that were getting worse. So, we sat down, and I didn't ask my mom because I didn't get along with her really well. And she was pretty explosive a lot of the time. But I took my dad aside and said, hey, Pop, you need help? And he said, oh, that would be great, Soupy. So he said yes so quickly that I just said, I am going to jump in and I'm going to do this, as we do as caregivers. I had a full-time job, but I knew that I was going to be able to do this and figure it out. They lived about 90 miles from me, but I was just going to handle it all, and I was going to do it perfectly and do it by myself and fix everything right away.
Well, and we know that is a recipe for a lot of challenges, which we're going to dive into. I know we'll get deep into all of that, but there is that mindset that caregivers tend to have of I have to do it all myself and I can do it all. I'm not going to need help. I'm going to figure it out. But there's so much unknown that comes with caregiving because so often people are taking this role on for the first time. And if you think about our jobs, we don't go into a new job expected to know every single thing about the company we work for and the role. So why do we put that expectation on ourselves when it comes to caregiving?
Yes, and in such an intense, committed role. I mean, the stakes are so high when we're taking care of others. And I think that's part of the issue. I was thinking today that, we don't procrastinate as caregivers, and I think a lot of us are sort of type A personalities. We're go-getters and we have a lot of skills and we're very compassionate and empathetic and kind. But I also think that, we're just go-getters. And I believe that, we don't question whether we're going to show up or not. There's no, like, we don't make a pro and con list, it's just, we get in there. So we don't procrastinate and we do commit. And I think that we bring a lot of expectation to our roles and we take it very, very seriously. And I think we do believe, and the stakes are so high. It's a very serious commitment. And I think that as caregivers, we just, we don't take no for an answer. And sadly, we don't consider that means to us.
Yeah, that's a great call out there, that saying yes, yes, and yes you're saying no to something else. And that's often yourself and your well-being and your own care needs, your mental health.
Yes.
So I think that's where we start to see so many emotions kind of come into play. And one of which is that guilt and shame that we're talking in depth about today. Yes. And so many family caregivers that I talk to experience those emotions. They feel guilty for not doing enough. They feel like they should be doing more. And then they feel guilty if they have to move their loved one or if they have to get help or support. So first, maybe let's, if you'd be willing to talk about the difference between guilt and shame, and then why are these so common in the caregiving experience?
Yes. And the thing that's so wonderful is that we're talking about it because, this is a subject. Caregiving comes with intense emotions. That's everything from fear to grief. We have pre-grief and, we have anger and resentment. Caregiving has a lot of big emotions and we don't talk about them. And then we worry that we're not allowed to have them. And, it's wonderful that we have the conversation, not only about the big emotions that we have as caregivers in general, but caregiver guilt and caregiver shame. And they are different because guilt is about behavior. Guilt is about doing something, feeling bad about doing something or not doing something. There's that both sides of that coin. And it's about feeling bad about something that we've done, and which in a way, I think guilt can be a positive thing because we make adjustments, we learn.
Good point.
Right. And, I think I'm not saying that I don't want anyone to feel ever guilty about anything because it really doesn't do anything for us, but it gets a much worse rap than it could get because I think we learn from guilt. I think we say, oh, you know what? I feel bad that I did that. What can I do to change that? Yeah. Where shame is about us. Shame is about how we feel about us. It's not about a behavior that we feel bad about. We feel bad about us and how we react to things. So in other words, if we make a mistake, we start to think we are the mistake.
I see.
Or if something bad happens, we're a bad caregiver. And sadly, shame makes us take on this responsibility of doing things and acting certain ways and beating ourselves up about it. It's not a positive emotion in any way, shape, or form, nor does it have any role in our caregiving whatsoever. Because what it can do is it can make us depressed and anxious because we're judging ourselves. Shame is about judgment, self-judgment, and that's a really dangerous territory.
Absolutely. Well, it can lead to a whole other host of things, as you mentioned, anxiety, depression. So I'm, again, so glad we're talking about it. And how do you think a caregiver could go about identifying those feelings within themselves?
Right. And this, for me, the things that I learned about all the emotions I was going through is I had to be aware of them. We stuff all our emotions because we're worried about the emotions of those we care for. We don't have time, nor are we allowed. Like they're sick or I have to take care of them. What am I angry about or what I'm resentful? Why do I feel guilty? Why do I feel? So even acknowledging them is difficult for us. So we really have to, tell caregivers that it's okay to have these emotions and they're big. Yeah. And to be really careful that we don't compound them or stuff them.
Yeah.
So when I say compounding them, it's like we feel guilty about feeling guilty.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Or we feel angry about we're angry at ourselves for being angry. Or we get anxious that we're anxious. And managing our emotions in a really healthy way takes work. Absolutely. And not like we're not already so exhausted. But I mean, the first thing we have to do is kind of be self-aware and understand that for me, my mom and I did not get along. So I had a lot of work to do to make that relationship work. So that I had to realize that I felt miserable and I was really upset and really overwhelmed. And I had to realize that she couldn't change. She wasn't going to change. I had to. So then I had to start looking in the mirror. And very slowly but surely checking in with my body, checking in with my heart, checking in with, was I tense? Was I snappy? Did I feel sick to my stomach? Was I scared? Was I not sleeping? All these things. I had to take some of that focus from them and work at putting it on me so that I could say to myself, oh, I don't feel right about that right now. And what am I saying to myself?
Yeah.
That was a mistake that I made. Why does it have me so afraid? And why do I feel like a bad caregiver? It was a mistake. We all fail.
Yes.
And fear of failure makes us not move forward, which can be dangerous, So I had to really start to say, wow, what am I feeling? I can see what my mom's feeling. She's mad. She doesn't like that I'm taking care of her checkbook. She is ticked off and screaming at me. I could identify that, and I could even try to understand that. But I had to say, wow, I'm angry right now. I feel guilty right now, and I'm beating myself up about that.
Yeah, that self-awareness is so key. And sometimes it can be so hard. Yeah. Identifying your emotions, kind of sitting with those emotions, trying to understand where is this coming from. And so working through that, it can be challenging. And I know that there's probably various ways people do that. Some people probably journal their feelings. Some might go see a therapist or counselor. Right. Are there any other common ways you've seen caregivers kind of process these various emotions?
Well, I think we're all different, and I think it's true. We all have different caregiving styles and we all have different skills and talents. And I think we all handle our emotions differently. I think that the key for me, and we can always only speak for ourselves. The key for me was really working at checking in with myself, like on a daily basis. Yeah. And maybe even setting a timer and saying, what's going on. Constantly learning to say to myself, okay, what am I feeling about this? And being aware of my body, because I feel my emotions physically. I don't know if a lot of people, right? A lot of people do that. Like my stomach, is my stomach in my throat? Are my shoulders up by my ear? Is my voice raised? Am I calm? Am I having a calm? What do I sound like?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Am I dreading something? Am I so it was sort of really, and it wasn't easy, and I didn't do it right away. This is the other thing. There's no quick fixes with this.
Hmm.
It's just, for me, it's just sort of a general focus on ourselves and our well-being, and knowing we can do that, that it's not a luxury. It's
Yeah,
critical.
absolutely.
Are we eating? Are we sleeping? Are we hydrating? We're making sure they're hydrating. It's just a general awareness of what's going on. And for me, it was like my body. The minute my stomach went in my throat, I knew I was in trouble.
Mm. Yeah, those physical manifestations of the emotions
Yeah.
can be so telling. And the tenseness, I know that's for me. If I'm feeling a lot of stress and anxiety, I feel it in my shoulders and my neck, and I start to get headaches. And so I think just being in tune with our body as a caregiver is part of this equation too, and acknowledging, okay, I'm feeling something physical.
Mm-hmm.
What's the emotional component here? Is let me kind of tune into that too, because probably there's a correlation happening, likely.
Absolutely. And the irony is that we're so attuned to our loved ones.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
mean, we have this radar. Was that an extra cough?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Or was that, why aren't they eating? And they're drinking. Oh, they're really nasty. Are they in pain? I mean, we're so attuned. We have the radar. We just have to turn on to ourselves a little bit. And I think so many of us, sadly, are perfectionists. I always say I'm a recovering perfectionist. I'm always working on my perfectionism, and I'm sort of a control freak. And the positive side of those tendencies and traits, that I would do a really good job. Like, I'm really awake, I'm alert, I can handle crisis. I'm great at crisis. But I can be overbearing and need to be in control, and everything has to be perfect. Like, everything I do, especially when I'm doing it for someone else, has to be perfect. And life doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
We all fail. We have to make mistakes, or we would never learn.
Exactly.
So much of the general things that I learned about I got better at caring for my parents and my other loved ones by making mistakes. I got better at it. Why? Because something wouldn't work and I'd have to make a change.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But what I would do to myself, the shame that I would feel because it wasn't perfect, especially in such a serious situation when the stakes were so high.
Yeah.
I was a bad person. I was the mistake. There was something wrong with me. And I think it's that conversation that we have to talk about. There's nothing wrong about showing up.
Yeah.
If we weren't making the effort, we wouldn't be making the mistakes.
That's a good way to look at it. I never thought of it from that perspective.
We're in there.
Yeah.
We're in there fighting the good fight. Why am I beating myself up about it and think that there's something wrong with me?
Yeah. Well, and back to those learning opportunities and moments, if you're able to kind of reframe those, not as a failure, but an opportunity to learn and to course correct, try something else, that can help just kind of shift your mindset. And on a previous episode, I talked about mindset with Dr. Erin Blight, and we talked about kind of shifting our perspective on various elements of caregiving in our mindset. So that might be a good episode to go back and for people to listen to. But sometimes that changing of the perspective can just really be impactful for you yourself, but also the person you're supporting. Because as we're talking, Susanne, I'm thinking about often, especially in dementia care, the person we're caring for, they feed off of our energy too. So if we're tense and anxious and feeling anger at ourselves and guilt and all of these emotions, and they're physically manifesting, then the person we're caring for is likely going to pick up on that too. And then it could add to their stress and emotions. And then the whole situation can really elevate pretty quickly. So I think that's also something to keep in mind too, is when you're regulating the emotions in yourself, it's going to overflow into the caregiving situation and make for, really kind of a more not tranquil, but maybe for lack of a better word, tranquil situation for everyone involved.
For everyone, and the environment shifts. And I think that's such an incredible point that you're making. And we have to be aware of that mindset. And I think especially if we're dealing with family members or people that remind us of family members, they say if you're hysterical, it's historical. We have to be aware of our mindsets. And so often, because I think we are trying so hard and we are perfectionists and we feel safer when we have control, we have these expectations of ourselves. Yeah. And it's in those expectations of ourselves that we become stressed and we put pressure on ourselves and we feel shame when we're not this machine, this superhuman caregiving machine. Yeah. We really, I think caregivers, sadly, because there's some of the most giving, wonderful, compassionate, caring, smart people in the world. But, this constant, inattainable, super caregiving pressure we put on ourselves. And yes, we walk into, especially with cognitive issues, people with cognitive issues or dementia. My mom had dementia, and, of course, she was afraid. She was, they know. So if I was scared or if I was anxious and was tense from beating myself up, I would frighten her. And I found that the softer I could get with my mom, that I really healed my relationship with my mom because I learned about softness, and I learned that historically I would go into any kind of interaction with her defensively.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So we would start off in disagreement because how I brought myself to it. So when my mom started becoming someone else and she's slipping away from me, thank God I got the answer from me in that, what kind of behavior are you demonstrating in front of her? She's so easily frightened. So what do you need to do with you so you're not upset? Yeah. And to kind of go with the flow a little bit. And the softer I got, the softer she got.
Wow. I was actually just talking with a gentleman who was attending my support group series about this very thing. He had said that, his wife was diagnosed and he didn't have a lot of resources, so he didn't really know about dementia and how to react to his wife. But somehow he learned that the softer he was towards her, the more he was, one, able to care well for her. And then also her reaction to him was a lot softer, just as you explained. And so sometimes, again, we have to change our mindset as the caregiver and our approach to the situation. Because as you put it, Susanne, oftentimes the person we're caring for isn't going to change or not be able to change in the ways we want or hope that they will. So it's those kind of expectations that we put on the situation or on ourselves. And if we can strip those away, I think that can be so helpful. I know, personally, like throughout my life, I've always set these really high expectations, and I've done some therapy and work with counselors, and they always challenge me, who's putting these expectations on you? So I think caregivers need to check in with themselves too. Who's putting these expectations on you?
Yes.
Is it me, myself? Is it the person I'm caring for? And can we adjust those expectations to give ourselves a break? Or can we reach out for help? I think that is a huge barrier for caregivers, is asking for help, reaching out for help. And Susanne, I would love your perspective. Why is that? And did you get to a point where you finally were like, okay, I've got to reach out for help. This is too much.
Well, this is a question I have asked for years now. Why the people who so easily give help to others and understand the joy of giving help to someone, why is it so hard for us to ask for it?
Yes.
Right? It's so crazy. And I think a lot of it has to do with vulnerability. I don't like being vulnerable. That's my makeup. I don't like asking for help. That's how I personally grew up. I had a very critical mom, so I wanted to make sure everything was perfect. I think that's why a lot of us are perfectionists. I
Mm.
think that, whatever our history is, I think a lot of us cope by trying not to be vulnerable, being perfect, doing it perfectly, doing it by ourselves, and
Yeah.
not being vulnerable. I think there's a horrible, horrible problem with allowing ourselves to be vulnerable. Vulnerability is a power.
Yeah.
It's brave and it's powerful. But for me, I really hit a caregiver burnout wall. It was like a Sunday, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was shaking. I mean, and I couldn't sleep, and I was shaking, and I had a major panic attack. I just thought, I can't do this. I can't take care of my parents. I'm going to hurt them. They're going to die on my watch. I'm going to kill them. I'm going to die. I can't do this. It was horrific. And something inside of me reached for a telephone. I picked my cell
Wow.
up and I called another caregiver. And it was I didn't even I was so panicked, I didn't have time to stop myself from being vulnerable. Like, that's how desperate I
Mm.
was. I mean, that's what it took. So I was able to reach out and get help from this caregiver who helped me immensely, like immediately.
Wow.
Listened to me, made me feel heard, said, "Oh, I've been that, me too."
Yeah.
That's so great to hear. Oh, I've done that,
Yeah.
and really walked me through, oh, you're burnt out, girl. Here's what you need to do. Gave
Yeah.
me great advice, but the listening part of it. And when I hung that phone up, I didn't feel bad about myself.
Mm.
I didn't feel that feeling like, oh, I exposed myself. It was like, that worked. Do
Yeah.
you know what I mean? That so and the sky didn't fall in. I didn't get struck by lightning. So slowly but surely I started asking for help, like little things, like not that big ever again,
Yeah.
but like little things, like, just even asking for help with maybe, hey, if you do go to this grocery store, like get me like one loaf of bread, you know?
Yeah.
So I think the experience of being vulnerable and asking for help and then not feeling shame about it helps me move forward.
Wow. Well, I think you said a couple helpful things there. Is one, connecting with somebody who's been in your shoes, who gets it, who understands it, can help you realize you're not alone. You're not in this silo. You're going through things that others have gone through. And then their wisdom was able to help you. And so I think that's why I'm such a huge proponent of getting connected, whether it's through a support group or through social media or even listening to this podcast. Hopefully,
Yes.
people are listening and thinking, wow, okay, Susanne has been through a lot of what I'm feeling right now. And then getting to that point of, okay, others have asked for help and it's been beneficial to them.
Mhm.
Why haven't I done that for me? And then
Mhm.
figuring out what you need in
Mhm.
terms of help or what would be helpful to you. And then going for it, asking for help, whether it's asking family or friends, calling in home care like a home instead, getting some respite, some time away. Those things just can help relieve that burnout, or hopefully people get ahead of it and it can help prevent that burnout.
Yes, and I think the more we do it, I think the more the possibility of getting ahead of it is. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? For me, because practice kind of makes perfect for me, and the perfect word again. But like seeing that I didn't die, and I think so much of the shame. Our inner dialogue is all, there's a judge and jury in there
Yeah.
constantly. Like, the other thing, is to pay attention to what we're saying to ourselves, and to get it out, as opposed, that's why it's wonderful that you're talking about connection, and getting people to help us, because, once you get it out, it's just sort of lowers the heaviness of it,
Hmm.
and the fear around it. And I think and shame makes us worry about other people judging us.
Yeah.
We not, because we're constantly judging ourselves in our own head, and
That's
then we worry
true.
about judging outside. When in fact, I have found, like 9 times out of 10, if I open up to someone or I reach out to someone, I have therapists, I belong to groups, And this work is amazing. That's why doing this kind of work and these kind of podcasts, because the conversations are out there. Maybe someone will hear it. But the more I did it, the more I realized that I'm not alone, that everybody goes through this, especially in life in general, but especially in caregiving. My feelings and my fears and my perfectionism and my need to do everything right and my fear of vulnerability, we all feel that. There's so many, all of us feel this. Yeah. It's a very common theme. I'm not alone in my need to want to do this such important job perfectly. But I'm also not alone in knowing that someone else can share it with me and remind me that I'm showing up. Yeah. And I'm making a difference. We lose sight when we feel guilt and shame. I think we really lose sight of the fact that we are making a difference.
Absolutely.
You talk about reframing. There's the reframe. I'm here.
Yeah.
And I'm making a difference to someone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that difference is so important. And I'm sure in many of these situations, if you were to ask the person receiving the care, they would, be so appreciative and grateful. Not always, but a lot of times. And so we just, like you said, tend to lose sight of that. And so if we can continue to remind ourselves to connect with others, we can be reminded of just the important work and support and help that we're providing. And that's just something that we should keep at the forefront of our minds.
Absolutely. And I loved you talked about journaling. There's little things we can do for ourselves, just sort of get ourselves out of our head and out of our shame, journaling and seeing the small victories. Like I had a hard time seeing the little victories, like just, when my mom would smile or we wouldn't have a conference. I was blessed because I had my mom who was difficult, but I worked on that relationship. But my dad was so appreciative. He would verbalize it like, oh, you're the best. I really appreciate it. So I was really lucky. I had her who was not happy with my help most of the time. And he was so happy to tell me how much he appreciated my help. But I think the little things that I would do, like I would go to bed and go over and start to go over all the bad things that happened.
Yeah.
We have to celebrate the little victories. We have to be aware of the fact that we're saying to ourselves, oh my gosh, I did a lousy. No, you did the job. You made the mistake because you made the effort. Maybe it wasn't pretty, but you got that medication or you got that emergency room situation handled or, oh boy, the pills got taken care of today. We have to sort of do little things that celebrate what we're doing and define the compassion and grace for ourselves.
Yes. Yeah.
We're so hard on ourselves. And that's like the question of why can't we ask for help? Why are we so hard on ourselves?
Yeah.
Why do we bring, this high, inachievable expectation and perfectionism to one of the biggest gifts we're giving? It's a gift.
Yeah.
We're receiving a gift and we're giving a gift of caregiving. It's big stuff,
It is.
And to judge ourselves around it is so horrible. It breaks my heart.
Yeah. Likewise. Absolutely. Well, and I love how you said, focusing on those little wins, those little moments of joy throughout the day. And I know in some journaling practices, people will write down 3 things that they're grateful for or 3 things that went well. So that could be something small that a caregiver could start doing, or maybe it's just one thing. If we want to start really, really small, one thing from the day that went well, or one moment that was precious that you want to jot down and remember, one win. And then instead of seeing it as a failure, maybe you see it as, okay, what didn't go the way I hoped it went, but how could I change a little bit of the situation so that next time it goes better? So those kinds of positive
Yes.
ways of reframing it, I think could
Yes.
go a long way in reducing this guilt and shame that so many
Absolutely.
experience.
I love the reframing thing. I mean, it's instead of like, for me, instead of saying why, it's sort of what,
Yeah.
and I would even at times, like, I write about my mistakes.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, this happened. Why, what did you miss? Like what did we get from this? And why do you feel so bad about making it? Why do you think that you are a mistake when you make a mistake? No, you're not a mistake. You're somebody trying really hard, but what did it teach me? Instead of saying like, oh, why did I do that? It's sort of like, okay, well, what happened? And what am I going to get out of it?
Yeah.
Journaling and writing for me really is really helpful for me. And like you said, like the little things, like the little wins, then have a parade, go have a cookie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, have a parade, go take a walk outside. And I think that's the other thing too. I think that we're just so hard on ourselves. And I think hitting the restart button, and I think doing just the, people talk about self-care, and it's just the little things. It's just the little appreciation that we have for ourselves, and being kind to ourselves and giving ourselves grace, and going, getting out. Like, if you can get out, if it works, go walk around someplace. Shame can't live, in the light. I mean, it just can't.
Yeah.
And I think that the beauty of talking to other people who hear you and who acknowledge you. I mean, they don't, I don't even need feedback a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Because I don't need you to fix me. And like I don't, like, my parents and my other loved ones didn't need me to fix them. They just needed me to support them.
Yes.
So like, I just need the support of somebody listening to me. And I think that by getting it out, I'm not keeping it inside, and the shame can't grow because somebody else is going, wow, yeah, and laughing about it. And that's what happens when caregivers talk to each other.
Yeah.
It's like the floodgates open.
It's true. Absolutely.
Because I think we just all want to be heard. We're not built to isolate. We're not built to be alone. That's just not, we're built for community. And the beauty of community is connection. And the beauty of connection is feeling appreciated and loved, and knowing that somebody else feels this, like getting that look in somebody's eyes. They go, I've been there, done that, have the t-shirt.
Yeah.
Like, don't worry about that. That's nothing. I'm sure you and the people that you work with, I'm sure, like, the best thing somebody can say to us is, oh, don't worry about that. Yeah. That happens to me all the time.
Yeah. That is the most powerful thing I think a caregiver can hear, because it is that isolation. You think no one else is failing, quote unquote, failing like I am. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, there's a lot of caregivers out there who have done that, who have been in your shoes, who have failed that task. And I think that connection point, just to know that somebody else has been in your shoes, is comforting, but then also to hear what they've tried that's different from what you've tried, or, oh gosh, I never thought about it that way, or that perspective, or I didn't know that resource existed. And so again, that's why I think getting into these various communities or connecting in some way is just so incredibly powerful. And can go so far in helping a caregiver along their journey.
Yes, and I think, in a lot of the writing that I do, I'll get comments, and I think caregivers, they're not commenting for me to give them answers. I mean, obviously, we all want to share things that work for us. So I think that's really wonderful. But I think the thing that's great is that just sharing our experience or acknowledging their experience is really important. And then we become each other's sounding board and inspire each other, because we're all different. I always say that we're, on the same path, but we all take different journeys,
It's true. Yeah.
But I think just, any time we can sort of feel that we're not alone, that anytime we don't pull a task off beautifully, or it's not real pretty, or we fail, that this is just the stuff. It's just this stuff of living life and caring for others that when the effort's made, and there is no failure.
Absolutely.
It's just the arrow doesn't hit the bullseye, maybe.
But it's close.
But
close enough.
Close, and we shot the arrow.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's not like we're standing still frozen.
Yeah.
When someone needs us,
Yes, absolutely.
And that's magnificent because we're walking our loved ones home.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and Susanne, you've mentioned your writing several times, and I know you've written a book recently. So would you tell us what the book is? Where people can find it?
I actually have it. I pulled it out for you today. It's called Self-Care for Caregivers, a practical guide to caring for you while you care for your loved ones. I had, they came to me and asked me if I would write a little self-care tip book. So I said, sure, that'd be great. And it's 140 strategies and things that I did to help me survive my caregiving journey. I sometimes had to use like 139 of them until and get to the 140th that would work. But it's just strategies and things to think about and do and try to make your journey a little bit easier, a little less miserable, a little more empowered. And what's beautiful, and as I was writing it, of course it made sense, but I didn't realize until I got the book that there's one on a page, which is fantastic because you can open it anywhere and it's just one short thing to read. And it's great because we don't have time to read. I mean,
exactly.
Do you know what I mean? And there's an audio version of it on Audible, which is great because we don't have time to sit down. So you can actually put it in and listen to it, So I'm very happy with it because I just think it's just suggestions from me, stuff that worked for me and my mindset around it of how perfectly, as you said it, we need to reframe this. We need to understand that it's not a luxury to prioritize our own self-care.
That's so true.
We're better me's when we take care of ourselves. My parents didn't want me to suffer.
Exactly. Yeah. And we give so much to others. And so we need to take that time for ourselves. And so I'm so excited to put your book in the show notes, your website in the show notes so people can go check out your book. I agree. I love that it's one page, a short, easy read. Caregivers are always excited to hear about that. And so hopefully through the tips we've shared here, through the tips in your books and your website, that family caregivers listening can feel like they no longer have to live under that shame, that they can shine the light on it, release it, and move forward. Take the pressure off and realize you are doing a good job. You are providing the best care that you can today, and tomorrow's a new day. And you can start fresh the next day, not have to carry that guilt and shame of what happened yesterday. Reframe it, learn from it, and move forward. I like that term, moving forward. I think I'm going to start talking about that a little bit more.
Yes, and that's from my dad. My dad, keep it moving. Keep it moving. And he lived his life that way. He was shot down in World War II. I mean, he had scars from his ankles to his butt on both legs. I mean, he almost lost both his legs. Keep moving.
Wow.
And he was able to, life, he just loved life so much. And I think that, I think that's the message. I think that we have to remember that this is a precious time with people we love and care for.
It's very true.
And we can't, don't listen to that bad roommate up there.
Yes, the voices in our heads. And I agree. It's, if you're so caught up in the guilt and the shame, you might lose the opportunity to be present with your loved one. And you don't want to look back after your caregiving journey ends and have that guilt and shame extended into your post-caregiving journey because you have so many I wish I would have, coulda, shoulda. So I think that if you're going through the journey now and you're able to kind of unpack some of this and work through it, hopefully you'll have less of it on the other side.
Live in the present. That's a brilliant thing you just said. We have limited energy as caregivers because so much of it is in crisis mode so often. Don't waste the energy feeling bad about yourself.
Yeah.
It doesn't do anything, and it's a lie. It's a lie. It may not be pretty sometimes. It often isn't pretty, but it is. Yeah. And we're making the effort, and we're angels walking on earth. Caregivers are angels walking on earth. I really believe that.
I would agree.
So, yeah, we're good people.
Absolutely. Well, and Susanne, I'm just so grateful that you've been here with me today to share your story, your journey, your thoughts, your advice, your resources. I've learned a lot from you, and I'm grateful for our time together today.
Oh, thank you so much. This has been wonderful because I learned too. This is what it's about,
Absolutely. Thanks again. I want to thank Susanne again for joining me today. I hope our conversation has shed light on the complex feelings of guilt and shame that so many caregivers experience. Remember, you are not alone, and it's okay to ask for help, to take breaks, and to show yourself the same compassion that you offer to the person you're caring for. Caregiving is a journey filled with highs and lows, and by addressing these feelings, you can embrace the role with resilience and self-compassion. If you have additional thoughts or stories you'd like to share on this topic, please email me at caregiverchats@homeinsteadinc.com. That's caregiverchats@homeinsteadinc.com. I also invite you to follow us on Facebook at Home Instead Inc., Home Instead INC, for previews of upcoming episodes, caregiving tips, and more. And you can find all of the links in today's show notes. Thanks for listening, and please remember to take good care of yourself while you care for others. Caregiver Chats is brought to you by Home Instead. If you're looking for in-home care to support you on your caregiving journey, please visit homeinstead.com to learn more.